this first edition of the Mystic View. I'm your host, Psychic Medium, Dr. Kimberly Rackley. The Mystic View show intends to bring light and understanding to that which seemed dark. I hope to bring illumination to the paranormal and to spirituality by combining the metaphysical, the psychic, and the paranormal worlds. I'm honored tonight for my premiere to have as my first guest, author, lecturer, and paranormal researcher, Mr. David Rountree. Tonight we will discuss his research with mediums and the paranormal. His research has made a significant improvement in my life as a medium, and if you are a sensitive, a psychic, or an empath, you may wish to check out his research at his website, which is www.spininvestigations.org. Hi, David. How are you?
I'm doing great, Kimberly. How are you?
I'm great. Excited about my new premiere. Wish I was live, and I apologize for not having a cam. I'm having issues tonight, but by next week I'll be up and running.
That'll be good. Hey, congratulations on your new home.
Thank you.
The Penn Network is awesome. So You're in a good place.
I'm beginning to see that. Eric is amazing, and I really appreciate him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess let's begin with first, I guess, the understanding of your hypothesis of your research, that it's possible for mediums who experience fibromyalgia and migraines that you can maybe cancel out that pain by stimulating the nerve directly with specific frequencies of EMF.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I sort of stumbled onto that a couple of years ago when I was with Tracy Ray, and she had a lot of problems with fibromyalgia symptoms. And it always seemed to hit her after she would do a reading, or she would do 3 or 4 readings and not have a problem. Then she would do like 1 reading and she'd be like bedridden for a couple of days. And so I started looking into it, and I'm not the only one that's researched fibromyalgia and that sort of stuff by any means, but there haven't been a whole lot of people to look at it in mediums. There have been a few studies done on it, but they were more correlative studies, looking at the percentages of mediums that have it versus the ones that don't, kind of thing. But it turns out that fibromyalgia strikes about 2% of the general population, but in mediums it's about 85%. So I started looking at that and saying, gee, maybe there's something we're not looking at here. And I started thinking about it as being an energy-related disease, having to do with energy. And I started looking at the human body like it was a big electrical system, and I started troubleshooting it like it was, like a computer or something. And it dawned on me that mediums gather residual energy when they do readings. And sometimes that energy is in phase with their own biofield, sometimes it's not. But when it isn't, it creates all sorts of health problems for the medium. So we started looking at some simple solutions. And the first solution we came up with, of course, is the grounding strap, where you put a static wrist guard around your wrist.
Which I use.
And you attach it to ground, and it bleeds off a lot of that residual energy. It's almost like grounding for real. And it bleeds off a lot of that surface energy that clings to the outer part of your skin and acts almost like a shield that cancels some of your own biofield energy. We've tried it out on probably about 30 different mediums now, and they all find some relief from it. I mean, some people get better results than others. Like with anything, there are some things that work best for some people, and they work okay for others, and then maybe not so good for others. It's a cross-section of effects. But that's not the only thing that we started doing. That was something that was relatively easy. I could tell somebody over the phone to get, or I could send them a link on Facebook or in an email and say, hey, try this. It was kind of a thing that everyone could just go and buy, and it's like under $10, and you put it on, and it helps or it doesn't. Most people it helps some, at least. And I recommend that everyone do it after they do their readings.
But I mean,
seriously,
I said, we're trying to give you a break so we can go out.
Hey, could you guys hold it down just a little bit? Thank you.
Go out.
Oh my God.
That was not me.
Yeah, no. But what we started doing is we started looking at the central nervous system. And when you're treating fibromyalgia, there are these things called trigger points. And they're scattered in different places on the body, front and back. Well, those trigger points are places where there are clusters of neurotransmitters and neural receptors. And where those clusters are is where the pain information travels up through your nerves. Your nerve isn't one straight ending, non-ending nerve that goes through your body. It goes to points, and then there's like a jumper point, an air gap, and the spark fires across the air gap from the transmitter to the receiver. But what it takes to do that is this chemical buildup of a certain, chemical cocktail that occurs that allows that arc to occur. Well, we found that by using these things called a Mobius sandwich coil, and this coil was designed by NASA 20 years ago, and they used it as a passive shield for sensitive electronic equipment on satellites to protect the satellites from solar flares and protect the electronics from solar flares. If you place one of these over the trigger point, it creates a null effect that shuts down the EMF transmission from the neural transmitter to the neural receiver. We've treated headaches with this on the head. We've also treated body aches and pains with it as well. But it's a passive treatment. It just sits there. The big challenge in using it is getting these twisted little coils to stay on the trigger point without falling off of it. The second step that we took with this is we took regular copper coils, inductor coils, placed those over each trigger point, and then stimulated the neural clusters with low frequency EMF. And each person has a little bit different frequency that they respond to, so there's not one set frequency to use. You have to kind of play around with it a little bit. And we use an oscillator, a variable frequency oscillator, so that we can play around with different low frequencies to find the one that seems to give the best relief for the subject. And with about a 20-25 minute treatment of this active neural processor bombardment, usually the medium gets 2 or 3 days of relief until the chemical level builds back up in the neural transmitter. And then they start feeling the pain slowly increases back up to its normal level over a period of a couple of days. But it does give some relief. That's not the kind of thing you can set up in your house or anything, but I'm pretty optimistic that at some point we'll be able to do like a holistic treatment on people, pretty routine. In other words, where people can come in, spend 15, 20 minutes underneath of it and walk out and be good for a couple days and, maybe come back. So we're looking at that aspect of it as well. So that's kind of the nutshell of the fibromyalgia medium connection there. It's a disease that has to do with energy, and in a medium's case, it's foreign energy or energy that's picked up in the process of doing their readings, and it remains residual. And if you left it alone over time, it eventually bleeds off. But the idea is to restore the medium back to their normal state of health much more rapidly, so that they're not, taken off their feet for an extended period of time. It's to accelerate the recovery point, in it.
Yeah. Because I know with me, like, if I have a really intense investigation or I do, like, more than 6 readings in a day, sometimes it knocks me out for, like, 3 or 4 days at a time. It's too hard to recover. And I think my trigger points are, like, at the base of my skull and between my shoulder blades. And even though, like, the migraine part can be relieved, I still feel the soreness and the stiffness in my neck and in my shoulder blades.
Right. Well, that might not necessarily be where the trigger point is. That might be just where the pain is felt at. The trigger point may be on either side of that, on your left and right shoulder blade, which is where the neural clusters are located. So it is possible. I mean, I do have a map of the trigger points on my website in the fibromyalgia research section. We actually have a picture of a human body with the trigger points mapped out on it. So, you can go there and look at it. What we do, though, is we stimulate all of the trigger points. So it's almost like a whole body treatment. Whereas you sit and you stimulate, like if they're laying on their stomach, you stimulate all of the ones that are on their back or, visible on their back at once. And then you can have them roll over, and then you can stimulate all the ones that are on the top of their body at once. And it's almost like flushing the toilet, you know what I'm saying? Just kind of flushes everything out and lets them start over again. It's kind of like a global body healing to do that. That's what we're playing with now, and we've just started doing. I experimented with it for about 6 months, and finally got it set up so it's usable, and the wires are right, and the connections are right, and it's comfortable, and so we're now getting to the point where we're starting to use like human guinea pigs on it, and seeing what kind of results that we're getting. And so far it looks pretty promising. I mean, we've had 2 subjects to test it so far, and they have reported that they have felt relief by using it. So that's very promising. It's a non-invasive, non-medical solution.
Right, almost like Reiki. Now, like with Reiki, can this be done like remotely? Like, I know you're a shaman, so I know you can do things remotely, but can this process be applied remotely?
This particular process can't be, because it has to be specifically targeted to a specific region of the body. So it would have to be done locally in almost like a lab environment where you can control everything. And you also have to do some shielding as well. But and you're shielding EMF. You're not shielding anything dangerous or anything. You're just shielding the EMF so you don't have a scatter effect where you've got stray EMF going to different parts of the body where it doesn't need to go. But doing things remotely is a little bit different mechanic, because when you're doing things remotely, you're literally traveling to the point and entering into that person's body as a spirit, or as a non-corporeal form, in order to facilitate that healing. It's more of a, we say we do it remotely, but actually it's not being done remotely. Our physical body is remote away from it, but our essence goes literally to the spot, to the body of the person, and goes inside of that body by traveling there. So it's a little bit different process, but the fundamentals of it are very similar, because you're using energy to stimulate a situation to offer relief by using, it's a different form of that EMF energy. It's a more biological form of it than what we're artificially producing in the laboratory.
Right. Now, do you think that emotions are EMF, are emotions of the medium involved in this at all?
Yeah, of course, because everything that runs through our central nervous system, which includes emotional response, pain, all sorts of feelings, intuition, it all runs through the central nervous system. It's all a different cluster of frequencies running along this wiring system. So the emotional state of mind determines what frequencies are on that electrical line, so to speak. Like when we go into our house and we plug something into the wall, we have a single frequency coming out of that wall. It's 60 hertz, or 60 cycles per second. In the central nervous system, a single nerve could have 10 million different pulses and frequencies running on it, depending on what subroutine is being run by the central nervous system and what routine is being run by the brain. So we're looking at a very complex system with a lot of information on a single wire per se, and everything that's on that wire is a factor. Now, when we go to stimulate those nerve clusters, obviously we're not trying to get you to not feel sad or not feel happy, although those are conditions that can be artificially altered as well. We are looking for a specific frequency that has to do with pain, and we're only dealing with that pain frequency.
Right.
If we wanted to deal with emotional response, we would directly stimulate the brain with the EMF in different places. In fact, Dr. Michael Persinger has been doing that for years with his God helmet experiment. And there's a great deal of data about that, what frequencies are used, and he uses complex waveforms to do that as well. But artificial manipulation of the central nervous system and the brain using different frequencies of EMF is not only possible, it's done all the time. In fact, there are non-lethal weapons that are being used today that are designed to affect the consciousness of a human being. So it's real, it works. What we try to do is use it for a positive, outcome.
Yeah.
It's really a negative one. You can't have people walking out of the lab doing the funky chicken when you get done,
No, I feel like I go through my day like that anyway most of the time. You absorb so many emotions and experiences. I mean, as a medium or an empath, when you reach for someone, you're actually absorbing their experiences and their emotions and their thoughts.
Sure.
So sometimes it's hard to get rid of those. Yeah.
Absolutely. I had a weird question the other night. An empath was just making a statement saying, God, could somebody just turn this off for a night so I can get some sleep? And so, oftentimes, Occam's razor was a wonderful invention, which came from actually the Muslim world, believe it or not. But Occam's razor states that the simplest explanation is usually the best, and that's so true. And I said, you're probably going to laugh at me, but why don't you take some aluminum foil and cover your head with aluminum foil and then ground the aluminum foil? And they're like, I'm ready to try anything, And they did it. They took a clip lead, clipped it to the aluminum foil, did it like we do the wrist guard, static wrist guard, grounded themselves out. And they were like, wow. And what they were doing was the aluminum foil was actually becoming a shield that shielded the brain from external EMF. I mean, it wasn't a great shield, and it was pretty much, you can imagine what someone would look like with aluminum foil pressed on their head. But the concept is we could build a helmet literally that would shield the head from EMF, and it would block out a lot of that external empathic EMF that people are receiving. And it would give them a break without affecting their physiology in any way. It would just be basically shielding their brain from picking up these external EMF resonances that are creating the mayhem in their brain. So
I would so use one. Everyone thinks I'm from another world anyway, so I'd walk around with one. Who cares? And it made me feel better.
The ideal thing to do would be to make basically a head covering out of new metal, which is a special alloy that blocks electromagnetic fields. And it would be relatively lightweight, and just wear it for a while. And while you had it on your head, you wouldn't even have to ground it because the new metal itself acts as a shield. You could put that on your head and wear it, and the whole time you had it on your head, you wouldn't get any interference from anyone, thinking near you. So you kind of like taking a vacation for a little while you had this stupid-looking hat on your head. Maybe we can make designer Moon Metal hats,
Designer ones. I love hats.
Yeah, we can put stones on them, maybe feathers, dress them all up.
Sequins. Don't forget sequins.
Oh, yeah. Sequins.
I like sparklies.
Gotta have sparkles. But, yeah, I mean, so, stupid things that seem like, why didn't anybody think of this before, actually works. And it's because we complicate things way more than we have to when we look at stuff. If we know that it's coming from EMF, then the simplest thing in the world would be to block the EMF. So if we block the EMF out from that particular person and it has an effect that's a positive effect, hey, that's great. And that's kind of what we're looking at. We're trying a whole lot of different things because there is no research to build it on. There's nothing to look at of anyone who's done anything before that says, okay, if you do this, it works. We have to just kind of throw everything we can think of in the mix and see what comes out, clean. And
well, you seem to be throwing the right things into the mix because you're having results.
Well, I have a lot of failures too. I mean, it's not like, I don't talk about those.
Of course not.
So those don't, get a lot of airtime. But it's a hit and miss kind of thing. You come up with an idea, you try it. Maybe it works partially, but not the way you want it to. So you kind of like reinvestigate it. You look at it. you redesign it a little bit, and you kind of refine it. And it's a never-ending process. You keep doing that until you end up with, hey, this works really well if you do this. But getting to that point of doing this, you may have had 2 or 3 failures along the way where you learned the folly of your mistakes, and you learn, and you build upon that. And then when you finally get something that's viable, then you come out and say, oh, hey, look what I found. So it makes you look a little better than you are, maybe. But, there is a process that you go through to reach that point. But, I don't know. I try to think very simple when I look at stuff, and I try to look at it in a very analytical sense to say, well, what could be the answer? What could cause it? Okay, it could only be caused by this, this, and this. So what can we do to affect this, this, and this? And then it's just kind of like common sense, really. It helps to have a background and, knowing. I don't know a whole lot about the central nervous system, but I have been doing a lot of reading about it since I started doing this research. And, it helps to get knowledge. You got to understand what you're working for, what you're working on. And it's kind of like, people are looking for ghosts. Well, what's a ghost? If you're not really sure what you're looking for, how do you know what you found when you find it? You don't really.
Exactly.
And it's the same sort of thing. I mean, we need to fully identify what our target is, and then, aim for the target and see what's effective. And it's a process. You don't just wake up one day. Now, I will have to say that the whole grounding out thing was a spur of the moment hit. I mean, I just came up with it off the top of my head and said, try this, and it worked. And then we just refined it by coming up with the strap, because the first advice I gave on that was to touch your finger to the screw on the cover plate of your wall outlet. And that's kind
which
of
I tried.
Yeah, which is an awkward position to be in, but I figured if it did any help at all, then we could come up with a better solution. And it did. So that's when we came up with the static wrist guard as being employed, which works a whole lot better than sticking your finger on it.
Yeah, because you can relax more.
Yeah, well, you can relax, you can read, you can watch TV, you can take a nap if you wanted to. It's a little bit easier on, the body and on, the psyche to sit there and do that, because it's effortless, where sticking your finger on a wall outlet and holding it there, it takes effort.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of counterproductive. But it worked, and then we refined it. So that was kind of a out-of-the-box hit. But, common sense thinking, and understanding the human body and how the human body works. It's a big electrical system with a computer running it. And if you look at it that way, you can treat it that way. And it works.
Exactly. I mean, and we are made up of EMF. I mean, everything is EMF. And so that makes total sense to me.
Well, every signal that runs through our body, every piece of energy in our body has a frequency to it. It may be a low frequency, but it has a frequency. And that electricity is EMF. Once it's flowing, it's EMF.
Yeah, because as a medium, I see things in vibration and frequencies. Like everything has a certain frequency or an imprint.
Right.
And when I interview scientists, they hate it when I use the word frequency or vibration, but that's what it is. That's how I see it, so that's how I describe it in frequencies.
Well, that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what scientist has his head so far up his ass that he doesn't get that.
Well, you know several,
everything,
but I'm not going to mention names.
Everything has a resonance. A rock has a resonance. Everything you can name, every piece of reality has a resonance to it. And that resonance is the frequency it vibrates at naturally. So everything has a resonance. Even the earth has a resonance. The universe has a resonance. I mean, everything has a resonant frequency. In fact, you identify properties of things by their resonance. There's certain types of testing that's done to test the resonance of material to determine what that material is based on its resonance. So, I mean, this is at a nuclear level, but still it's the same thing, and you're right, everything has vibration. We do not live in a static universe. We live in a dynamic universe, and the dynamics of it is, in order for energy to propagate, it has to have frequency, and if it has frequency, it's EMF.
Exactly. Now, do you think, for me, like certain TV shows or movies or music, they're like triggers, like they're like stimulus of certain EMF frequencies that oftentimes make me either feel bad or good. Is that any way related?
Well, if you're listening to music, then it's not EMF. You're listening to acoustic energy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, acoustic energy can cause entrainment, which is a condition that occurs in the brain when the brain waves are shifted artificially by input. And what I mean by that is you can listen to some music, you can listen to some sounds, you can listen to some tones, some mixes of tones that will entrain the brain so that the normal frequency of the brain waves alters, either to a lower or a higher frequency depending on what the desired effect is. That's called entrainment. Mm-hmm. And if you go to my website, I actually have entrainment audio files for treating certain maladies of the human condition on my website. And they are just, you can go there and you can download the files. They're audio files. There's one for migraine headaches. There's one for, I think I'm not even there yet that I can go to it, but I think there's things for like depression. I think there's things for all kinds of different conditions. And they're just complex mixes of tones that create a condition in the brain which alters the brain waves. And those brain waves alter to a more positive state of being by entraining them to those frequencies. But that's done with acoustic energy, which is a little bit different. When you start using EMF to do that, and you can do EMF entrainment, you don't hear it, but you feel it. Because what's happening is it's artificially creating your brainwave frequencies or bringing your brainwave frequencies in line with the frequencies that you're using to cause the entrainment, but you don't feel it. And you can have other effects as well. And this is what Persinger's work has done, is he has artificially stimulated different parts of the brain with different frequencies. They don't hear the frequencies, but they have vivid experiences from those stimulations. In your case, if you're listening to music, you're being entrained by the music. And of course, it can trigger emotional response. It can trigger a lot of things because the music wasn't selected to create a certain effect in you. You're creating the music to listen to it, and the byproduct of listening to that music is its effect on your consciousness. So depending on what your state of mind is and your state of condition and where your brain waves are riding at is going to depend on how that song affects you. And you probably have certain songs that affect you the same way over and over again, no matter how many times you listen to them.
Exactly. You're so right.
Yeah, because it's the same set of frequencies that are altering your brain waves.
Okay, now, I'm a theta facilitator, so I spend most of my day going into the theta brain state.
Mm-hmm.
Would this have the same effect as receiving psychic information, like as a medium, where it builds up in your nerves and makes them overactive?
It can. It depends on how it's being processed by the individual. If you are constantly entering into a specific state of awareness and maintaining that state of awareness, there is fallout that could happen from that. You could have a buildup in your neural transmitters and receivers that could create uncomfortable conditions. For the most part, a lot of people use a lot of different techniques to realign that energy or to keep that energy in line while doing that. I think there are Far Eastern exercises that allow you to align your chi force, which is the same kind of thing. You're keeping your normal energy flow going while you're altering your mental state. Because just in altering your mental state, you're just taking a segment of the body and you're messing with it. And that's affecting everything else in the body that's in the system. So you want to kind of gingerly shift the whole system at the same time, not just the brain waves.
Exactly, which is sometimes where I have my problem, because when you have back-to-back clients, you don't have time to
You
realign
don't have,
yourself on it.
that's
Yeah,
right. You don't have a recovery time.
yeah,
So you're jumping right out of one thing into another.
yeah.
And to continue doing that for 3 or 4 readings is what puts you in the danger zone. That's
Hmm.
what gets you into that condition where you could have a backlash effect where you get sick or you get pain or you get a migraine headache or you feel like you're so tired you can't move and yet your body's vibrating with energy kind of feeling.
Exactly. It's like you're on a high while you're in the theta state, but after you do it 6 or 7 times during the day, it's like, I guess, like a sugar crash when
Yeah,
you're done. Yeah.
exactly.
Hmm.
That's exactly what it's like. And then you're on that sugar crash for like 3 or 4 days where you can't do
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah. Exactly. But, so, where do you plan on taking this research further?
Well, right now, what we're going to have to do is numbers. We're going to have to start working with a lot of different mediums and seeing if there's any variations to see if to see if our own research is anecdotal or not. I mean, we could just have hit on some anecdotal data here that seems to be doing what it isn't. So we've got to start doing numbers. We've got to take this thing and start treating a lot of different people and seeing how different people affect. And one of the things we're doing now, Dr. Stephen Rourke and myself on our show, The Devil's Advocate, we're going to have a series of mediums on and we're going to interview them. And the purpose of those interviews is to come up with a questionnaire that we can give to mediums, to have them fill out, to give us categorizing information on them. In other words, where to file them as subjects. And then we can take that information and we can correlate different conditions based on the survey answers to what's physically encountered when we actually do the physical research. And then we're going to try to see what can happen. Now, the byproduct of this is we may be able to enhance mediumship. We may be able to enhance psychic ability. We may be able to enhance this whole empathic thing, we also may be able to shut it down or to close it off momentarily for a period of time. The possibilities are kind of endless as to what we could do, but by being able to understand it, it would allow us to be able to manipulate it. And we could manipulate it in a positive manner. In other words, I've had mediums come to me and say, God, I just want to shut this off for a day.
Exactly.
Well, maybe we can someday. Maybe we can say, okay, you lay down here, you put this on, you flip the switch. When it turns green, you take it off, and you're good for a while. I don't think that's unhealthy. I think if it's done in the right manner, I think it's just like exactly what we're saying. You kind of turn the switch off for a little while, and it comes back on by itself. But it may be that we're capable of doing that. That may be what the research develops by doing this. It may be that, mediums get into a fog sometimes where they get really poor reception. Kind of like the old rabbit ears on the TV when we were growing up. Sometimes you got a good picture, sometimes you got snow. Well, on those snow days, there may be something we can do to enhance the reception. We may can artificially improve the performance for a brief period of time or for a limited period of time that allows a medium to recover from that. It may be that the medium wants to have snow, and so we may can degrade
Sometimes
the
we do.
Yeah, we may can degrade the reception to snow so that you get a break from it sometimes. I mean, the research is fascinating because what we're really doing is we're unlocking a part of the human mind, and we're also learning how to externally artificial stimulate it. A lot of people say, well, gee, Dave, isn't that dangerous, And it's like, yeah, it would be very dangerous if we were doing it to, affect the population or to kill people, but we're looking for, relief for people. Trying to help people that have problems that modern medicine is like poo-pooing or saying, no, you just need to be on Thorazine and, be over there in a little white coat or whatever.
I just had an image of Pinky in the brain.
That correlation has been made. All right. that has been made already. We're we're not trying to take over the world. We're just trying to help people that don't have any help from traditional means. I mean, a lot of people go to their doctor. The doctor looks at them like a tree fell on them, and they're not getting any help.
Exactly. I mean, even if you're not a medium or an empath, this research can be helpful.
Well, if you suffer from fibromyalgia, it could be helpful. And that's the thing. I mean, we think that the nature of fibromyalgia is an energy-based disease. I think it's energy-based. There's something going on that's creating an overload of energy in the central nervous system. If we can discover how to shut that down or to attenuate it to a certain amount, it could offer relief to thousands of people suffering from just regular old fibromyalgia. We don't know that yet. I'm hesitant to work with people like that because God knows the liability involved in something like that.
Exactly.
So I work with mediums because,
they're already open.
Right, yeah, they want anything. They're looking for help, and so there's really no danger of any liability there. But I mean, nothing that we're doing is really dangerous or anything else. We're just experimenting with stimulating different parts of the body, with low energy EMF. But in this day and time, people catch on anything to rip you apart. So it's right now it's research is being done on trust. I mean, and obviously, if somebody wanted to throw a stick in the mud, we could be shut down pretty quick doing that. But we try to help people. It's about trying to help people, and it's funny. As long as you're getting positive results, everybody loves it.
Exactly.
We hope we keep getting positive results, put it that way.
It's the same thing with a psychic reading. As long as you're giving positive results and information people want to hear, they love you. But the minute you say something they don't want.
Yeah, they keep coming back. That's right.
Exactly.
It is. It's crazy. And, I mean, there's no fundamental research being done in this line of stuff dealing with mediums because most of science doesn't even want to believe that mediumship is real.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that we're at a position right now where we can take somebody, lay them on like a bed or whatever, set our scanners up around them, turn on the scanners, and then have them do their thing. And we can tell you if they're real or not. We can literally tell you, yeah, they have all these prerequisites required, and we're watching emerging information emerge into the environment near them, and they are getting that information. So we could literally certify somebody as being a medium by doing that.
That's amazing.
And what's cool is the people who are genuine love it. They're like all for it. They're like, wire me up. And then you say it to somebody and they go, oh no, science will never find out what the answer to this is. Oh no, there's no way. It's voodoo, it's mumbo jumbo, it's feathery realms. That's the people that I look at and I go, yeah, okay.
No, I would love that. I would love for there to be some kind of evidence of how I'm receiving or what I'm receiving. I wish other people could see or feel what I'm feeling when I receive information. That would be amazing.
There actually is. We've captured waveforms, and I've posted them on my page several times in Facebook, and in the Spirit Lab I put them in there as well. We have captured what I call a disembodied biofield, where it literally looks like almost like a heartbeat, sort of, with a lot of other information on it. That was emerging by a medium when they were in the process of getting information.
Wow.
We can't demodulate the information and translate it. That's something we don't understand how a medium does yet. But somehow or another, a medium demodulates that information off the carrier and translates it into, their brain translates it into information that they can process. And it comes in just different forms. Some mediums see things in their mind like they're watching a movie. Other mediums are like, have voices telling them stuff. Other mediums see imagery and feel things or smell things. But it's all being done in the brain. It's all being processed in the brain based on these emerging information waveforms. So
Yeah.
I can show and demonstrate the waveforms, but I can't tell you what the content is. So,
Right. And when people ask me, how do you do it? I mean, how does it come through? It's hard to explain because it's just there. It's just all automatically there at the same time. Like the words, the feeling, the picture, it just kind of all merges into one thing. And then that's what you know what to say or express. I mean, it's hard to describe.
And what's even harder is you're not getting it in context.
Right. We have to interpret it at the same time.
And most real true mediums, their inaccuracies come from their misinterpretation of the information that they get. Mm-hmm. They don't interpret the information properly.
I agree. I always tell people, no psychic can be 100% accurate. There's just no way, because each medium and each psychic perceives in a different way according to their beliefs and their background. It's just, you can't.
They don't
be
receive
100%
it in a different way. They process it in a different way. They
Exactly.
all receive it the same way, but they process it differently. And it's the act of processing that information is where the trouble comes in. I was trying to explain it to someone the other day. It's like taking a big book like, War and Peace or something, and then flipping through it like a couple hundred pages, stopping and then reading a paragraph, and then flipping another 100 pages and reading a paragraph, and then having you sit there and go, okay, what's the book about? Well, you can't tell them what the book's about, but you can tell them the information you got. And that's essentially how a medium works. A medium is getting a couple of paragraphs here and there, and sometimes they're not even in order. And sometimes it takes 5 or 6 different pieces of information before something comes out that throws it all together and ties it together to make it make sense. Because you don't necessarily get it in the order that the information flows at. You may get the end of the story at the beginning, or the middle of the story at the beginning, or the end of the story at the beginning. It varies on how you get the information. But if you are reading for that person long enough, eventually a piece comes out that throws it all together and brings it all together. I mean, I've sat there and watched a client look at a medium and go, nope, don't know what you're talking about. Nope, boy, you're way off on this. And they'll say 5 or 6 things. Nope, I don't know anybody like that. And then they'll say one thing, and all of a sudden, oh my God. You see this look come over them, and the whole thing fell into place. Oh,
exactly.
Yeah, you see the light bulb go off at them. But it takes, you can give people a ton of information, excuse me, and until it's correlated and falls into place, it's meaningless to them, just as it's meaningless to the medium getting it. And a lot of people don't understand how mediumship works. They think they can come in and say, okay, I want to talk to my dead grandmother. Well, guess what? She may be busy.
Exactly.
You're not going to get your dead grandmother, but you're getting your drunk Uncle Charlie coming through. And he's telling you, that you need to go fishing more or whatever. It's not like Burger King. You can't have it your way.
Yes, and then people think that you're fake or not, authentic because you're not bringing through exactly what it is that they want to hear or who they want to hear.
Yeah, but it doesn't work that way. You are getting bits of information.
Yes.
You don't have any control over who gives you that information. It's whoever's available at the time when you turn the light on. When you turn the light on and say the medium is in, stuff starts coming to you. You have no idea who it is, what the relationship is, or what the information is. You're just getting it, and you're spewing it out. Well, until it all falls into place, it doesn't make sense to anybody. And even afterwards, if the medium doesn't get confirmation from the subject, the medium doesn't even understand what just happened.
Exactly.
So,
and I've read for you many times, and sometimes what I'm saying at the moment makes sense, and then later it would be 2 weeks after I say something that it makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of times.
You never discount what it is that I'm saying. You take it into consideration.
No, you just have to file it, because if it's not applicable now, that means it's going to be applicable at a later date. But, and that's the nature of the information. The information doesn't come at a precipitous moment. It comes when it comes.
Right.
And a lot of times it's up to you to put it into context because, you don't have any idea of what it means until all of a sudden it all falls into place and you go, oh, yeah, that's right, So, I mean, that's the way it is. I mean, it's like mediums don't have the fine-tuning capability of targeting specific things. They can target a specific event, and they can pull things from a specific event, but they can't pinpoint a specific person in that event every time. Now, they can sometimes, like if they're looking for a murder victim or they're looking for someone who's disappeared and they're dead, they can look for a specific and get to it, but sometimes that journey is through a roundabout methodology. Sometimes they're going through other disembodied consciousnesses to get to that disembodied conscious. It's not always a direct path. So
exactly. And most police departments don't understand the process fully. I've worked with a couple on murder cases, and it's just not my thing because it's hard explaining how the process works to people who are not truly understanding or open to it. Like, I can lead them to certain things, but not the one thing that they specifically want to hear, so they don't think that it's real. Well, but even though all the little clues I've right. accurately perceived, but
And that's the thing too. They're looking for real hardcore evidence.
Yes.
And a lot of times it's not so cut and dry. It's not so black and white. A lot of times there's a lot of gray, and it takes a special kind of detective to work with a medium, because the detective has to shift gears a little bit. Mm-hmm. Has to start looking at the information and not just taking it at face value, taking the information as to what it could be. You can't just look at it and say, okay, well, it's on, Black Dog Road. It could be it's on Shepherd Drive or, whatever. I mean, there's nuances that the detective has to kind of interject, being familiar with the location and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, to me, even if you're going on a paranormal investigation, the consciousness or the state of mind of an investigator or anyone, the consciousness of that person affects what you're going to receive and how you're going to perceive it. I mean,
the environment certainly plays a large role in everything. Mm-hmm. and how you pass through that environment and how the environment receives you, so to speak, is everything in what you get. So if you're not familiar with the geographical area, then you're operating at a handicap to start with, because you're getting imagery, you're getting information that you can't relate to. It's just imagery that you're getting. It's hard to transpose that to where a person who is familiar with the terrain or familiar with the environment to understand what it means. And that's the frustration in doing those kind of cases, is the fact that you see things, but you can't accurately portray them without a name on a map, to give to these
right.
people. And that's the hard part of it. I mean, that's the part that, that's the weak link in it. You could be seeing a place out in the middle of the woods and have no idea where it's at in the middle of the woods, but you could accurately describe every pebble in the scene you're seeing. But if you don't know exactly where that scene is at, it's not a big help to the cop that's trying to find it.
Exactly.
And what happens is when they do find a body that you've described where it is, then it all falls into place, because they're saying, oh yeah, here's the stream of running water, here's the sign, here's the tree that's got the fork in it, here's this. Everything that you explained is there, but you can't lead them to that spot because you can't put that spot into perspective as to where it is globally,
Exactly.
That's the shortfall.
And then the medium may also be either perceiving the impressions or the energy of either the victim's last moments of consciousness, or either the murderer itself. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's where the body is. That's just the most significant memory that the medium is picking up.
Sure, and you have no idea what it is
Right.
because it's not in context. All you're getting is information.
Right.
And that's what they need to understand when you work with the police, is they need to understand that all you get is information. You can't disseminate that information. You can't analyze that information. All you can do is relay that information. How it fits is really not something you can do. All you can do is supply that information. It's up to the detective to see where it fits. So it takes a real kind of special detective to work with a medium, because they've got to think a little differently than a normal detective does.
Exactly.
Normal detective is listening for, testimony and following up eyewitness testimony. A detective that works with a medium is getting information and has to make sense of the information and see how it fits into the puzzle. It's a different process. It's still detective work, but it's a different kind of detective work. And it takes a little more, a little more right-brained person to do it. Because you got to be able to think a little bit out of the box to do that sort of thing.
Exactly. My husband is loss prevention for a major department store, and he'll call me or text me, "This is what's going on, what do you feel?" And it will take him like at least 20 to 30 minutes to put my information into context, but it usually, once he applies his logic to it, it usually plays out, and he is able to do something about it. But sometimes it doesn't, because what I'm relaying, he doesn't quite, he can't put it into a logical context. But most of the time he does. But then again, he's open to the way that I feel, see, and hear things. So, yeah, it does take someone special.
Well, because you're having to interpret it. See, that's
Yes.
the thing. It's the interpretation is the weak link in all of it. I mean, you could be getting great information, but if it's misinterpreted, it's sending you on a wild goose chase, and there's no way to really know that if you've misinterpreted it. And the only way that you can interpret more accurately is through experience. I mean, you just have to have more experience, and say, well, usually when I see this, it means this. But you have to have enough experience to be able to categorize things to increase your probability of having a decent interpretation of information.
Exactly. And the person has to be willing to admit that it makes sense to them. Yeah.
You've got to have that confirmation. You've got to have feedback coming back from it. Because, again, you have no reference point for the information. The information is just coming. And to get it all to fit or to get it all to fall into place requires external confirmation of certain aspects of it. And a lot of people say, well, you shouldn't need confirmation. Well, you do need confirmation, because if you throw information out there, they need to confirm the accuracy of your information.
Exactly.
If your information isn't accurate, well, then they need to tell you, no, you're wrong. Okay?
Yeah.
And maybe figure out what's going on, what's wrong, what's happening that you're not getting the right information. Maybe that information is applying to something completely different around this person that has nothing to do with what you're trying to find out about right now. But it has to be something else about them or a near family member. There's so many variables involved in it. And, it takes a little detective work normally from normal people to figure out sometimes what a reading means. Because they're not, usually readings have little obscure properties to them. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Oh, yes.
But usually the type of information you get is very obscure. And I think that's done for a reason, because it's an identifier. It allows the client to firmly identify that no one could have known that insignificant piece of information but that person. And so I think that type of information is given to demonstrate the reality of its source. Because I've seen some really bizarre things being given to a medium. I mean, little pens that are meticulously described, like a jewelry pen that you would wear, that are meticulously described. And when the description was given to the client, of course, burst into tears and knew exactly what it was about. But you would sit there thinking, I don't know why I'm seeing this, pen of a ladybug, with green emeralds all over it, or whatever. But it's an identifying marker. And it's an identifying marker that only the source of the information could have known about. So you get obscure information all the time that makes absolutely no sense as to why you're getting it. But generally, it has to do with identifying the source of the information.
Right. Well, David, we have like a minute left, and I want to thank you. Do you want to tell people where they can find you?
You can find me at www.spinvestigations.org. You can Google me. You can find me on Facebook under numerous disguises and antics. So,
true. Thanks, David.
Thanks for having me on, and good luck on your new series.
Thank you. I hope you come back.
I will. Thank you.
Thanks.